The Called and Served podcast is not affiliated with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guest and do not necessarily reflect the official doctrine or position of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This podcast is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. For more information, please visit the official website of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints at churchofjesuschrist.org. Hey, welcome to Called and Serve, and today we have a special guest, Jared, also my brother-in-law. He is from Castle Rock and has served his mission in Tulsa, Oklahoma in, 1993 to 1995?
Yeah.
And is currently serving as Elders Quorum President in your ward, and also served as, secretary?
I've served recently as a stake executive secretary. Okay. Before that, and then several other callings in the past for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for coming to my podcast here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really appreciate it, especially being the first one.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share.
Yeah, okay, well, if you can, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So I grew up here in Colorado, went to high school here in Colorado.
Right.
Growing up, my passion was music, and I play the trumpet.
Yeah.
I still play the trumpet, and grew up doing that. We lived up in the mountains here in Colorado, so also had a lot of fun running around in the mountains and doing things like that. And then
I've seen the videos.
Yeah, you've seen that. Yes, you have. And then after high school, went to University of Northern Colorado for a year. Yeah. Went on my mission after that, and then I came back from my mission, picked my studies back up, and studied a few more years in the School of Music up there before I realized that it probably wasn't going to work out for me to make a living playing.
That would be kind of hard.
Playing trumpet, especially with kind of the life that I wanted to live from that point on, and so
with a family.
I met my wife at University of Northern Colorado, and then we have 3 kids, and we've lived different places. We've lived in Utah a couple different times, lived in Indiana. But we always felt like Colorado was home, and we're glad that we made it back here, and we've been back here for the last 15 years.
Right. Yeah, and and your family's pretty musically inclined anyways.
Yeah.
Your mom sings. I play the piano. Mm-hmm. And then you got a brother that plays saxophone. And
very good saxophonist. And my dad played the banjo, very good banjo player. So my grandpa played the mandolin and the accordion and sang. So it goes back, several generations. We have one of the original families in our ancestry that joined the church joined in England, and he was a musician. Yeah. And he and his family immigrated over after they joined the church, back in the 1800s, and came over to the States, and then he started a band here.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's pretty interesting.
So it goes way back.
Yeah, no, I didn't know.
It's
it went
in my
that
blood.
Far back. I know you guys are pretty musically inclined family. I mean, obviously, your sister's my wife, but she sings really well. But I mean, we're not. We personally are not a music family.
Sure. Yeah.
But no, but you guys have. So you've been up here in pretty much Colorado, and then you grew up in the church.
Yeah. So we go back a few generations in the church. And so I grew up going to church every Sunday and learning the gospel from when I was young, and
So that's interesting.
Always a part of our lives.
Right. And you have, and we'll get into it more, but one of the things, you have 2 interesting stories I think are very important with with your mission and the time frame that you went that are, you know, in comparison to like my mission, they're pretty good stories. We'll get into that a little later,
sure.
But for sure. Now, how many siblings do you have?
So I have a sister who you are married to,
right.
And then I have 4 brothers.
Right, and you're the oldest of all of them.
Yeah, I'm the oldest of 6.
Right, and so you guys were, well, growing up, I guess you were preparing to serve your mission at some point when you became of age.
Yeah. I mean, I think I grew up always wanting to serve a mission.
Yeah.
You know, it was part of our family culture.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of LDS families, that's the case. You know, it's part of what you do.
Right.
But at some point, I think it has to become more than just a cultural thing. Right. It's got to become more of like an expression of your testimony and faith.
Yeah. And I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. And I think for me, it was a matter like my dad served a mission in Central California. I had an uncle that served actually in pretty much the same area or close to the same area. Other uncles that served missions. My grandfathers never served a mission because they were in World War II.
Right. Yeah.
But if you go back another generation on my mom's side, my great grandfather served a mission as well.
I didn't know that.
So yeah, you go far enough back, and there's some others. So it's I think it's a wonderful legacy.
Yeah, especially in y'all's family, because honestly, when I joined the church and got to know your family, all of you had served a mission, all the boys. You know, I mean, Mel might have gone, but we ended up getting married instead.
Sure.
But
yeah.
You know, you went to Oklahoma. Your brother Aaron went to Vegas.
Yes.
And then Clint went to Canada. Joel went to Brazil. So kind of, and then your dad in California.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. But that's pretty interesting because I think that was one of the things that like inspired me when I joined the church. Your brother is the one, Joel, who actually introduced me to the church and baptized me. But, you know, I remember thinking about wanting to serve, but I didn't know much about it because I was brand new.
Yeah.
But how positively your family talked about missions and the importance of it. And do you think that helped guide you to want to serve your mission? Because like you said, an expression of your testimony. But, you know, I think sometimes when we look, some people say, well, I was forced to go on my mission or whatever. Do you ever felt like that was a thing in your family per se?
No, I never felt forced. In fact, there was a period of time where I kind of didn't necessarily want to serve a mission. Yeah. There was a period, I don't know how long, but as I mentioned before, music's a big part of my life. Yeah. My original plan was to play professionally. Right. And so I in my own mind, my own sort of younger mind, I thought if I take a break from music, my skills are going to go away. Yeah. Right. I'll forget the things that I've learned. I won't be able to pick it back up to the same level. And so I was worried about that. And so there was a period of time where I thought, maybe I don't want to serve a mission, but I never felt like if I talked to my parents about that I would have been pressured or
be a disappointment to them or something.
No, I never felt that way. And that's a credit to my parents. They were always, I think they gave us a lot of freedom and didn't force or pressure things of a spiritual nature with us. And I think that was important, because they raised some pretty independent kids.
They did.
And so I think that's a piece of it. But ultimately, when I eventually really had a strong testimony of my own, then that question just sort of went away.
Right. And then that was still in the time of when you had to be 19. Is that correct? To serve as, what did you do to that year prior? The 18, because now the missionaries go out at 18, the males, and then females with 19.
Yeah.
So what was your preparation up to the mission and doing your paperwork? Yeah,
sure. So I would say that the first thing was that I was at college, and I served in callings there.
Right.
In fact, I was called as a stake missionary.
Okay.
Back when they were calling younger people to be stake missionaries.
Right.
And so I did that while I was at college, which was, I think, great preparation because I got some opportunities to teach as part of that and work with the missionaries. So I think that was important.
Right.
And then reading my scriptures, I think, was a big help to me as well. But there came, when I finished that semester, and I didn't leave until July, and so I had a couple of months there where I went back home to live with my parents.
Right.
And during that time, I think that's where I really recognized the importance of the temple in my preparation.
Yeah.
And so we lived about 2.5 hours away from the Denver temple. But so what I did was I think it was mostly on Saturdays that I did this, but I would just get up really early, drive up to the Denver temple, and I would just spend all day there in the Denver temple. And then drive back home. And it was easier to do then because they had a cafeteria in the temple. And they had like awesome cinnamon rolls and stuff. Yeah. So it was really good. And but I would do like, I don't know, 3 or 4 endowment sessions.
Really? So,
yeah.
So you really, those Saturdays prior up to use that temple, I never thought of, I was new to the church, so, I went to the temple a couple times prior to mission, but I would have never thought to actually include that as a preparation. Your preparation, I'm thinking like, luggage or, some of the more superficial stuff, but yeah, that's actually a good, I think a good lesson to think of, like, going, and I think today they're actually calling more missionaries that are about to go out to serve and work in the temple.
They are. They are encouraging them to work in the temple before they go. Yeah. And I think that's really crucial because, what it does for you, it does a few things for you. One is it really helps solidify the covenants that you make in the temple in your own mind. Yeah. Because if you go once, you go twice, or, a few times before you go out on your mission, it's not necessarily clear to you what your covenants are, what they really mean. But if you go again and again and again, you have a really clear idea of what your covenants are, and that can strengthen and sustain you through your mission, I think.
Through the 2 years.
And I think also one of the things, just me personally, but one of the things that really helped me with is when I would go and I would spend all day in the temple, I knew what the Spirit felt like. Those were really, I still remember how I felt leaving the temple during those all day Saturday sessions. And so when I got out on my mission, I could,
you knew what to recognize.
I knew what to that's right. I knew what to recognize. Like I knew what the Spirit felt like because I had put myself in that position.
Right. And that's something I didn't understand until I was out on my mission, just real quick. But like, I remember we were teaching an individual who was super excited to get baptized. And then prior to his baptism, he had a couple questions. And so we went there. My companion, he was really good at scripture, right? He knew the scriptures in and out. And so when we were teaching him, we kind of lost that spirit, that feeling. And it became more of a, I'm trying to prove it to you now.
Yeah.
And so like that spirit definitely got restricted, and
sure, yeah.
You know, and I wouldn't, you know, and that's a good thing to mention. Like you knew exactly what that spirit would feel like, and you're teaching somebody who is wanting to get baptized, and you knew how to keep that spirit there by.
Yeah, and I think you know, like then how to help others recognize it.
Right.
Right. You're feeling the spirit as you're teaching, and you can tell the person that you're teaching, how do you feel right now? You know, that's the spirit. What you're feeling right now is the spirit. And so, but this, you have to recognize it first yourself before you can do that.
And it's more than just reading it in the scripture. Like, what is it, Galatians 1:5 or
the fruit of the spirit?
Yeah, the fruit of the spirit. I mean, you know, yes, you can read it, but what really is that?
Yeah.
You know, and how do you recognize that? And you know, I think there's two different aspects of that. Like you're reading it, but what really is that piece? Or you know,
yes.
So, so that's awesome. Well, that's a good. I mean, honestly, that's a great preparation, because I remember, you know, prior to mine, I didn't really know what I was doing. You know,
you were new to the church.
Yeah. So, but so you do your paperwork and you get ready now, and your calling comes in. You know, today it's almost like a reveal party. You know, you get the Zoom and everybody's you know, we've done it with our nephews and nieces who served, and it's a wonderful thing. Don't get me wrong, but was there something like that in your household when you got your call?
Yeah, so I was actually up at college when I got my call. It just came to my mailbox.
Right. You don't get it in the email.
At the apartment. I was living in a garage that had been converted into an apartment.
An apartment.
And so we had a mailbox out front, and it just showed up in a big white envelope in the mailbox. And I just took it into my apartment, and there happened to be a guy there visiting, just had stopped by from the student branch at the university. Yeah. And he was an older guy. He had already served a mission, and his name was Eric. And I was just like, "Hey, Eric, I got my call." He's like, "Oh, let's see where you're going." And so we just opened it, just the two of us. And I was like, "Oklahoma." Yeah. I was like, "Where's Oklahoma?" I had no idea where Oklahoma was. I mean,
you knew it was a state, though.
I knew it was in the United States, but I had no idea. I mean, I knew it was east, and I thought it was south, east of of Colorado. But you know,
what was your initial thoughts of that when you're? Did you have any expectations of wanting to go foreign, or did it even matter?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I would say that you always kind of wonder if you'll go foreign. You always think, you know, maybe that'd be cool to learn a foreign language. But honestly, when I opened the envelope, it didn't really matter. Right. It was just like, this is where I'm called to serve, and I'll learn about Oklahoma. Yeah. I mean, this was pre-internet days, and so you didn't just go Google, Oklahoma. Like you'd have to go to the library and look up,
or an almanac.
Yeah. You'd have to look up Oklahoma, and I probably didn't expend the energy to do that. I just was like, Oklahoma. Okay. Yeah. I'll learn about Oklahoma when I get there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not an almanac, but like an encyclopedia.
Yeah.
When you had like the 24, 30 some books.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So yeah, I didn't really have any expectations of what Oklahoma would be like or anything, I just, but I was excited. I think it was less about the place I was called and more about just the excitement of being able to serve. And to do what I had been prepping for. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And I think that's an important aspect of when callings come in, right? I think, we all want the expectation of maybe doing, Australia or Japan or just something unique and different. Yeah, but then, like you said, it's about where you're going to go serve.
Sure.
That's the important part of it. And, stateside, foreign, it's all the same, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And each mission has, similar goals. Right. And yet your experiences can be radically different. And yet at the end of the day, your mission should bring you closer to Christ.
Right.
And should, in the process, you should be also bringing others to Christ as well.
Right.
And so, regardless of where you're serving, that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And what you're trying to accomplish. And so, but it can be accomplished in radically different ways depending on where you go.
Yeah. Now, being the oldest out of your family, did you feel like, I guess, lack of better terms, like fulfilling that example to your younger siblings or even to your own family, your parents? And
I guess as the oldest sibling, you kind of always feel that responsibility. Right. I don't know that I necessarily thought about it a lot, but right. I know, I think because you just grow up with that feeling like it's kind of your role to set the groundwork and to at least chart a path.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So
yeah, exactly. And then so you get your call, and then the big day of going to the MTC, I'm assuming that was at Provo MTC. I don't know if there's any other ones at the time, but that's the one you probably would have went to.
Yeah, I went to Provo, and I just spent 3 weeks there.
Yeah.
And in it was a great experience. Yeah. I was definitely ready to go out and leave by the time. But by the time I left, but I will say one experience that I had in the MTC in Provo that kind of, I think, set the stage for my mission. I think, like many missionaries, I was struggling with some doubt.
Right.
Not in the way of doubting the gospel is true, but I was doubting myself.
Right.
And my capabilities and my, and kind of hyper focused on my own inadequacies.
Right.
And I had this day where...
And this was at the MTC?
This was at the MTC. And we were just, we had like morning study all morning, or we had like morning class.
Right.
And then we usually had like a break where we would just do like some individual study.
Yeah.
And then go to lunch and then rinse and repeat.
Right.
Throughout the rest of the day.
Sure.
You know what that's
especially
like.
At the MTC. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, so anyway, in the midst of this kind of self-doubt and just struggling with that, I was doing my individual study kind of right before lunch, and we were all just in this classroom, and I read this verse. I still have it marked in my scriptures, but it talks about sort of finding answers, and when I just stopped on this verse, and I felt I can't describe it other than almost like a pillar of fire.
Right.
As you read about in Joseph Smith's account.
Right.
But this was like an internal fire.
Yeah.
And it just was head to toe, just this, I guess I would say, a purifying fire.
Right.
And that lasted for hours. In fact, I was walking from the classroom to lunch, and I was like, what is happening to me?
Right. Yeah.
It was that startling and that powerful. I was like, what in the world is this?
Yeah.
And it took some reflection for me to realize that was the Lord really affirming to me, like, you're prepared, you're ready,
right,
and I've got you, and
just trust in Him to
and I would say that it was one of those, you have a few of these experiences in your life,
right,
that are just so incredibly. They're turning points in your faith, in your testimony, in your life, and that was one of them for me. Was that overwhelming
feeling of knowing that you're doing the right thing, and that's where you needed to be at that time.
Yeah. And that I am ready.
Right.
The Lord affirming that I was ready to go serve. And I think that was, to me, if you took away everything else in the MTC and if I could just have that one experience,
right,
that kind of really helped set the stage, I think, for a lot of things that were to come on my mission.
And I think that's, that's an important aspect to even think about, or, you think, looking at you, you can say, well, I was born and raised in the church, and, of course I'm right. Like, that's what we talked about or whatever, or like in my case, being a convert and going out a year after joining the church, you think, how are you ready, or when?
Yeah.
And, I remember it, something like, not like that, but it took me maybe a couple months once I was in Portugal, and like, okay, it finally hit, I'm here and I can trust in the Lord to preach to these people that I'm trying to learn a different language, at the same time, instead of just going in there. I think if you're teachable and you're humble enough to accept that, it seems like the Lord had prepped you and told you, like, hey, you got this.
Yeah. And not everybody would have needed that.
Yeah.
But I needed it.
Yeah. And like you said, not everybody might need it, but sometimes you do need that extra little affirmation or confirmation, or it was important to me, right?
And I think that the Lord knew that.
I'm thinking MTC in the 90s. What was that kind of like? Just prepping, going to learn how to train or teach, and the discussion. Well, we still had back when we served. You were a little bit before me, but you still had the 6 discussions.
Yeah, and we had them in little plastic binders. They were they were like small.
Right.
Yeah, that's what we had, and you learned those, and that's a lot of what you studied in the MTC.
Right.
And we always did Book of Mormon share, which was really great. Like you would share what you had been reading in the Book of Mormon with everybody else.
Yeah.
And so it gave you really great practice in how to share a scripture and tie it to things that are meaningful to you.
Right. Yeah.
So those were some of the highlights. One of the highlights too is we got to go serve in the Provo Temple.
Yeah.
And I don't remember how it came about, but our district, which I think was 8 of us or something like that, we went over to the Provo Temple on P-Day. Yeah. And they were like, great. They're like, we need help today in the baptistry. Yeah. For whatever reason, they didn't have anybody in the baptistry, and they needed help. And so we went into the baptistry, and I want to say we were there for like 6 hours.
Really?
And we did hundreds of baptisms and confirmations in that time. I just remember that being just a tremendous spiritual highlight of my time in the MTC. It was really, really fun.
Especially in the MTC, to have those experiences, because, it's a great place. They have it figured out. To prep a missionary, get you in and get you ready to go out into the field where you need to be.
Yes.
Like it's such an amazing experience to just how they've got that structured. Yeah. The monotony of it, you could almost get lost in it, but being able to maintain and still have that spiritual experience while you're there is, I think, it's pretty key. Yes. Because you go through it all and you're like, oh, I just gotta go back to class or whatever. Yeah. And it can really get, oh, here we are again.
Yeah.
So,
that's right.
Especially in my case, I spent 2 months there.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah. And I'm stepping back just a second here, and you were talking about, having that burning fire, something I thought of. Like, do you think that helped you when you got, I know it did, but when you got out into the field to like step out of that comfort zone that you might, been more reserved, or how do I talk to people, and get out there and share a gospel, share, like, hey, the end state is we want you to be baptized and join the church and feel these fruit, but do you think that helped you with that comfort level?
Yeah, for sure. I think, I went out with more confidence. I think that was the big thing. And I needed that, like I was saying before, I'm not sure everybody that goes out would need that or would have that same kind of experience. But for me,
right,
it was and I haven't shared it with very many people just because it's a very sacred experience to me. But I think it's just one of those spiritual experiences that you have in your life that fortifies you for things to come. Because as we'll talk, I'm sure in a little bit, I had some particular challenges.
You did. You had some unique ones that I don't think most missionaries really would ever have. In reality.
Yeah, and I think that was part of that strengthening that I needed. Probably the Lord knowing what was to come.
Yeah. So then you get out on your mission, and one thing I do want to bring up, you had a very unique companion that I don't think any missionaries will ever have these days, or even that experience. Can you?
Sure. Yeah.
Who was that?
So that was my brother.
Yeah.
My brother Aaron and I served as companions.
Yeah.
Which wouldn't. I don't know if it could happen or ever. In fact, I know it couldn't because somebody pointed out to me now that in the mission handbook it specifically says you can't serve with a close family member, sibling or something like that. And so we did serve. So the way that came about was my brother. I had been out for maybe a year. Yeah.
And so it was already that long. I didn't know it was.
Yeah, it was about a year into my mission. But I was serving in Ava, Missouri. No, sorry, Anderson, Missouri. Yeah. And in Anderson, I had a companion. He was getting transferred out, and so I was due to get a new companion. What I didn't know is about, 2 or 3 months before that, my brother, who was, I think he was 17 at the time.
Yeah. So definitely not age yet to go out on a
Not
mission.
of age to go on a mission. Yeah. But back then they used to do these things called mini missions. Right. And it was where you would go and you would serve for, a week or so. I don't know how long they typically were, but go serve with a set of missionaries. But generally you would serve somewhere in the area. Yeah. But you would go and you would actually do everything with them, right? You would live in their apartment. You would,
just regular missionaries, just out for just a very short stint to kind of get the experience before they get called on theirs.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just so you could really get a sense of what it was like to be a missionary day to day. Well, he wanted to do a mini mission, but he wanted to do it with me. Yeah. And I had no idea this was happening. So he called my mission president and he said, "Hey, I want to serve a mini mission. My brother is there he's in Missouri, and could I come and serve a mini mission with him?" And my mission president was, I don't know how he felt about it, but he was kind of like, well, we'll see, we'll think about it or something like that. Well, a few months later, they had this transfer happen where they had an odd number of missionaries out. Right. And it was for some reason a short transfer between one transfer and the next was only 3 weeks. Yeah. Instead of, we used to do 4 weeks between transfers. Yeah. And so anyway, so my mission president remembered that conversation with my brother, and he knew that he was going to be short a missionary. Yeah. So he calls my brother back and he said, "Hey, you remember you called me about coming out here to serve a mini mission?" he's like, why don't you come on out? And he told him when and everything. And so my brother flew out there, and I had no idea.
That's crazy.
Any of this was going on. And so anyway, I show up to transfers. We were meeting in this parking lot to kind of exchange companions. And we had a bus that kind of went around the mission and
shuffled everybody around.
And everybody could put their luggage on and go to their next area. So I show up expecting to get a new companion, and instead there's my brother there.
And what was that like?
I couldn't believe. I mean, it was just amazing to see my brother. And one of the things that so he served with me for 3 weeks up in Anderson, Missouri. And it was a fantastic experience. I bet it was. To serve with him. But one of the things that it really has meant a lot to both of us is that we didn't really get along very well at all before my mission. I'm 3 years older than him. And I wasn't always the kindest big brother. I was a tease. Right. And so there
was 5 of you boys.
There was, And so, he had some hard feelings toward me, and our relationship was not great when I left. And that 3 weeks we spent together, that totally changed our relationship, and it's changed it ever since. And today we're good friends.
And I was going to say, you would never know that with the way. I mean, I know all you brothers get along, but I do know, Mel and I talk like, Jared and Aaron are really close, and so.
And I really owe it to that mini mission that he came out and served with me. And it's like when you serve with people and when you serve together, it brings you together, and a lot of those things that normally would drive a wedge become
superficial.
So
not important. But every time I hear that story, because it would not happen today.
No, I don't think so. I'm sure maybe somewhere it does.
Maybe I don't know, but it's kind of awesome to say you served with your brother. I've heard of like missionaries. They're close in age and they're out, and I guess they kind of end up getting the same call, or some family members in that way, but but not just your brother getting up and saying, "Hey, mission president, I'd like to come down and just do a mini mission."
And that's my brother. He's got no fear. He just
no, he does. So, but. With your companions, that just having your brother. Did you have any other companions that you thought like just either helped you or really helped you grow as a missionary?
I'll tell you, the funnest companions I had were the ones who really wanted to work.
Yes,
and those were the best times on my mission, because I went out to work. You were talking about mission prep. I should say that one of the biggest pieces of my mission prep was working. My dad was a stucco contractor. And he, he put me out with the stucco crew. And working that hard as a teenager, it is grueling hard work, to the kind of work that you do on a stucco crew. And it was just like he taught me how to work hard. My grandpa Shiflett taught me how to work hard, and so I came out to work. I came out to my mission to work, and because that's what I knew. Growing up was I learned how to work hard from them. And so that was a big key. That was a big part of my mission prep. But those were the best times of my mission, is when we were pulling together, you know, and we were both working hard. So I had a mission companion, Elder Postma, who I think the two of us probably had the most success, at least the most success in terms of people that we reached on my mission. Was with Elder Postma, and he was like-minded in that way. Like he wanted to work, he wanted to
be out there doing the job.
Yeah, he just wanted to get it done. And and I'm not saying that there's a lot of I think most missionaries do.
Right. I think so too. I don't think they just don't want to go out there and just take a 2-year vacation.
No. Yeah.
It's just more of like, what does work look like for that person? Or, Yeah. And I think with Elder Postma, we were on the same stride. Yeah.
And that was just amazing. You know, those were the best times. My brother was like that too when we served together for those 3 weeks. You know, he grew up doing the same kind of work that I did, and so he came out to work. You know, we had a lot of fun.
You do have fun when you're working. It's when you're kind of sitting there and you don't want to do nothing, then you're complaining the whole time. Or not happy with the way things are going.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I think those were the most memorable times on my mission, is when we were both really on the same page in terms of the work and what we wanted to accomplish.
And I definitely think that's a trait that your dad and your grandfather instilled in all of you, was work. Because outside looking in as an in-law, as a friend, but from Mel and all you boys, like, work is, you're not scared of it. You got a job to do, and especially out on the mission, the working is, the fun is, it's there, but like you were saying though, when you're out there working, then that's when it's fun.
Yeah.
And that's when it's like not just fun in that sense also, but spiritual. You're reaching people, you're getting to people, and
that's right.
So I think a lot of times, it's, I remember having a couple of companions who were just not into it. They wanted to be there, but it was just stressful, because now I'm trying to motivate them, and then I'm trying to get out there in a country that's already kind of hard to talk to. It's just, the way the people were raised. And, so when you both, we're not both, but when, one or both of you are just not feeling it, it becomes, not as fun.
Yeah. Those times are hard. Yeah. Those tend to be the troughs in the arc of your mission. But I think you're right. I think most of them, I think most missionaries are out there because they want to be out there.
Yeah, they want to be out there.
It's just a matter of, like, understanding the level of intensity that you want to go at it with. And it's changed, right? It's different. Like, when we went out, it was a lot of knocking doors. I mean, we would knock. There was one town that we went to. Well, this was in Anderson, Missouri, actually.
But we didn't have social media or anything like that.
No, you didn't have other ways to reach people.
Yeah.
And in Anderson, Missouri, just because of the size of the town, I could track the town out in about a month.
Yeah.
And I was there for 5 months. So there were doors there that I knocked on 5 times.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. Oh, I know.
And I could tell my companion, who was newer to the area, I would say, this lady's going to tell us no. She's going to yell at us.
Yeah.
This one's going to be nice, but they don't want to hear, But anyway, it was the only way that we had to reach people other than street contacting, which in that area there wasn't very many opportunities for that.
Yeah.
But I had on my finger here, even for like a year after my mission, I had this knuckle right here. The skin was just totally
calloused.
Like it had a big callus on it. Yeah. And it was just from knocking on doors, and that was just the way we did it.
Yeah.
So the work, I think, today is a little different. It's not probably as effective in a lot of ways to reach people that way, and missionaries are finding new ways to reach people. Yeah. And it's maybe a little bit less of
That's still part of it, though.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I'm sure, like I was saying earlier, missionaries all over the world are doing the work in different ways, depending on the local conditions,
cultures.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many different variabilities of what is effective in that area.
Right.
I remember having areas where, we just had to knock,
Yeah.
And that's what it was, just one door at a time.
Yeah, that's right.
But that also just say, look, we're here. You don't have to.
Yeah.
You're not out there to bash or, you're just, hey, we're here. Okay, you don't want to talk about it? Fine. We'll probably be knocking on the door again. But now you were talking about this elder Postma. Mm-hmm. Do you still keep in contact with him today or any missionaries or companions?
Yeah, I had some trouble kind of after my mission staying in touch with people, and I've reconnected with a few of them on Facebook and places like that. But it's been a little more challenging. I think when we got off our missions, it was the first time I had heard of the internet. Is when I got off my mission. I went to my first college class, and after my mission, and I sat down. It was a journalism class. The professor's talking about the internet and how it's going to change education and how it's going to change, how we consume media and the news and all of this. I had no idea what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And I went and found my brother who was on the same campus, and I said, what's the internet? And he looked at me like I was from outer space. Right. I just didn't, it all had developed over those 2 years when I was out on my mission. I had no clue what the internet was. And he said, he's like, come on, let's go to the computer lab. So we went to the computer lab on campus, and he brought up a web browser, and he was like, type in a question or anything you want to know about, any topic that you want to know about. And I typed it in, and all of a sudden, all these web pages come.
You could look up Oklahoma and find out all about it.
I could find out what and it just blew my mind because I had no idea.
I think about mine. I went in early 2001 when I left, and I didn't get an email. We weren't allowed emails, an email until the last 6 months of my mission. But think back, your time there, it's not too long ago for us, but for everybody else, there was no cell phones.
Yeah.
You'd have to go hit a hard line or, a phone booth, try to make appointments, talk to people, it's amazing how when you look at what, I think of, look at doing a podcast right now and talking about it, or, there was none of that back in those times. Like, when I was planning, I was like, I don't know. I just know I want to go on a mission. I'm new to the church. And the only reason why is because I know, like, the shiftlets are all going. Yeah. And everybody in the ward talks highly about it, and I need to go out, Yeah. But, I think, your son went out, your oldest, Adam, he went out with during the COVID. Yeah. And then there was a lot of, like, social media ways of trying to reach people, So it's amazing to see how those things have changed from that time to now.
Yeah, I mean, he spent the first year of his mission tracting. Yeah. In the last year of his mission, he wasn't allowed to tract. And so his experience was much, much different, the second half versus the first half. Right. And he had to adapt. Yeah. Credit to him, he adapted well, and he figured out ways to reach people. Yeah. I mean, they taught a lady purely over the phone because she didn't even have the ability. She didn't have the technical know-how to
do like a Zoom or
And so they taught her entirely over the phone.
That's amazing
because they weren't allowed to visit her because of COVID, and she was medically fragile anyway. And the first time they met her was at her baptism. That was the first time they had met face to face.
Awesome,
was at her baptism. Everything else they did over the phone.
Yeah.
So,
and that would be just interesting. I don't know if he probably had FaceTime or something at least, or whereas I couldn't imagine trying to teach over the phone alone, and but yeah. So you get out there and you're in Oklahoma now. What was the boundaries? So not just Oklahoma State. You said Missouri, so
yeah, we had the eastern like the eastern part of Oklahoma, which was Tulsa.
Okay.
And then we went up a little bit into Kansas, just the southeast corner of Kansas.
All right.
We had the southwest corner of Missouri.
Yeah.
And then we had just a little bit of Arkansas, like the northwest.
Oh wow! So you guys covered quite a bit.
So we had four states in the mission.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I was actually just thinking just Oklahoma.
Yeah, and I actually spent most of my mission in Missouri.
Really?
And yeah, that was where I spent the bulk. So
okay.
I started my mission in Oklahoma, ended my mission in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But in between, I spent a lot of time in Missouri. I had 3 areas in Missouri, and then I served for one area in Arkansas.
Right. And what was now stateside? I mean, we can all, for the most part, when we think stateside, it's all the same, right? But you went from Colorado to Oklahoma, Missouri. Was there a difference in the way, what you saw being raised in Colorado versus like Oklahoma and all those areas?
Yeah, I guess I would say my upbringing was good, really good preparation.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in rural Colorado, up in the mountains. Yep. And so when I went out, I kind of understood that way of life because I lived, most of my mission I spent in rural.
I guess, yeah, and areas. I guess most of those would probably be more rural.
Yeah, they were really small towns, most of the places I served. I mean, Tulsa wasn't, I did serve in Tulsa, which was bigger city, but most of the places I served were really kind of small town, a lot of country, a lot of people living. We had some very poor areas of the country. Yeah, I mean we had people who were living in literal shacks. That we taught. I didn't know that there were people in the U.S. that lived in those conditions, but some of those areas that I served in were like that.
Right.
And it was really interesting to, I guess, realize that some of my upbringing and understanding from
it definitely probably would.
People I rubbed shoulders with growing up would kind of, I think, help prepare me
translate to the mission
because I could relate to people who were in sometimes tough economic circumstances.
Right. And I think relating to the people, to who you're teaching when you're out on a mission is a very important aspect. It's not just, hey, we're here, these are the lessons, join the church. It's getting to know you and understanding the conditions or culture, whatever they're in, especially probably in those areas, Arkansas, Missouri, like you said, I know your family prepped you for some of that rural living. So, getting out there and as my brother Joel liked to say, we lived in a petting zoo. Had animals. We had lots of farm animals. We had lots of you did milking cows and goats and it's just what it was.
And
then you saw that out there. Now you talked about we had the best times, the fun times, it was working, but you ever have any of those areas that were just tough and you just didn't know, like, what do we do? And, how did you overcome that? If there was just, because you have some areas, I remember on my mission, just areas that were just like, it's just nonstop. And then you had some areas where like, okay, what is going on? What can we do? How did you kind of maintain a positive attitude? I mean, I know work, but what else,
Yeah. I think that's one of the things about missions that maybe doesn't get talked about some is that, you're going to, at some point, you're going to hit a wall.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to be frustrated. Yeah. With whatever it is. Yep. It's going to be some circumstance. It could be a companion.
It could be the area.
Yeah. It could be anything like that. It could be your own limitations, I know a lot of missionaries who go out and serve in foreign countries. The language is a limitation that they bump up against.
Right.
And I remember a couple of those places where it was almost like, what else do we do? Like, what else do we do to move the work forward? Because we're just not, whatever we're doing we're just not connecting with people, you know?
Right.
And I remember one town in particular I served in that was like that. And I remember sitting on the curb with my companion, and we were just spent. Like, we were just like, we were out of energy, you know? And we were, I think, just, wasn't like we were giving up, but it was like we paused for a little bit, you know, and there was a couple of days there where we were just like, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to get moving again in this area? And I think, I think it's just a matter of that's those times that build your persistence and build your capacity to persist. Right. You have to push through those times, and you just have to say, okay, I know I can't see the end result here, but I'm just going to keep going. Yep. And we're going to hope and pray that something, positive comes, and you put your faith to work, and you put your prayers to work. And, there were a number of times where fasting became part of that too. We didn't know how to help somebody. And so, so we fasted, and we you just find those, it teaches you kind of how to dig deeper. Right. And find your faith.
Yeah. Because you could easily probably just sit there and go, this is it. Like, I'm just going to wait it out until transfer or go home, one of the two, but you still have a job to do, work to do. And, you're still called to go out there and teach, even though it's hard. Yeah. And I think that's I guess a lesson or just something to understand, because I honestly, joining the church, I thought it was just all going to be easy. We're going to go out on the mission. I'm going to go out there and knock on doors, and but it wasn't that way. You had to, like you said, faith. You had to use that faith to be able to push beyond. Like, okay, this ain't like I was wanting it to be, but this is kind of, lack of better terms, the cards we've been dealt, and we're going to figure it out. Yeah. And push through.
Yeah, and it's this idea of the things that are of most worth. Yep. Usually take the most work. Right. And I think that's the way with the mission is, like, there are days that are hard. Yeah. Right. But when you push through and you work past those and you work through those. Yep. Then that's where the most growth happens, and that's where you often have the most the biggest highlights of your mission. In that area that I was talking about that was so difficult, we eventually tracked it into a family that was ready to hear the gospel. Yeah. And it was the only time on my mission where we taught and a family was baptized. That was the whole family. The whole family was baptized. Only time that ever happened. Wow. On my mission. Yeah. And that was one of those low points, where we had to push through.
And think, they were ready for it. You just had to find them. Yeah.
And they were there.
They were there, and you did, because, like you said, you had to push through, use that faith. Yeah. Because, imagine if you did give it, then sure they would have been baptized at some point if they were ready, but, you're just prolonging it,
Yeah, they were ready to accept the gospel, and they were ready to move forward, and it was a great experience.
Yeah, especially with the whole family. Usually, in my experience on my mission, never got a whole family to join. It was either the husband or the wife or one of the kids, or maybe a wife and kids or husband and kids, but never never everybody together, you know. So,
it was one of those miracle moments.
I think that's the blessing of knowing what you're supposed to do, being out there doing your job. And, you know.
Yeah.
And the Lord knew.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, there's people everywhere who need Christ in their lives.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the Lord knows where they are.
Yep.
You know, we might feel like, you know, that they're not there.
Right.
Maybe like, I don't know, there's nobody here who wants our message.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he knows where they are.
But he definitely does. You know, he knows. And, you know, speaking of the highs and lows and some of the challenges, you know, this is what we were talking about a little bit earlier, not leading into it, but you had really two unique challenges, I think, that most missionaries, I think I said it earlier, will never know or see, you know. The first one I want to talk about is you lost a brother while out on the mission.
I did.
Your sibling. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, sure. So this is when I was serving in Anderson, Missouri, actually. This was actually before my brother came out and served.
So this was before.
Or sorry, no, this was after.
After,
he came,
okay.
Yeah, sorry, after he came out and served with me. So he had gone home. I was still in the same area.
Yeah.
A couple months later, and I got a call from our mission president, who was very emotional.
Yeah.
You know, and he said, this is really hard for me to tell you, but your brother has passed away. Right. And of course that, you know, everything kind of comes crashing down when you hear news like that. Yeah. And he sent a couple missionaries, our zone leader and his companion, over to our apartment who didn't live close by. Yeah. But they showed up almost immediately after I got off the phone with him. Yeah. And so he had already sent them before he called me. And my zone leader, Elder Oman, he spent the entire day with me. We just went for a drive. We went just kind of all over the countryside and just talked. Yeah. And I tell you that probably helped me and meant more than anything to me, was just to have him, you know, listen and just be there as a friend. Right. You know, for that was just huge. Yeah. And anyway, my mission president felt like I needed to go. He had talked with my parents. Yeah. And he felt like I needed to go home for my brother's funeral. Yep. And so I went to Tulsa, which, you know, to the mission home, and I met him there, and he gave me a priesthood blessing. Yeah. Before I left for the airport to go back home. Yeah. And in that priesthood blessing, he said that I would be a pillar of strength to my family. Yeah. Which was, I don't know if that was where my head was at. Right. Yeah. But that was what I needed to hear. Yeah. Because I needed to understand, like, how my role as a full-time missionary and serving and going out and teaching this every day, teaching about the plan of salvation, right? Teaching people about what happens when you die, yep. Teaching people about the Savior and how he, through his resurrection, we can all live again and we can return to live with our Father in heaven again. That's the hope that I was sharing with people every day. Right. Now my family was they were the ones who needed that lesson, that message. Yep. And so that was what I tried to do. Yeah. So when I came home, you know, I met my parents at the airport, and they were clearly devastated. Yeah. You know, it was, you know, it's something you're not used to seeing your parents like that, right? You're
especially usually, your dad too, though.
My dad's very strong. Was a very strong and strong man.
Yeah,
and not very emotional.
Right.
But this was different, and so, my siblings too. I think they had it much harder than I did because they were there. When all this happened. And so it put me in the position where I tried to, even though I was only home for, I think it was like 2 or 3 days. But just to try to be somewhat of a strength. While I was there, while I could be. And tried to help.
Well, probably like you said, that pillar of strength, especially for your parents, and then your siblings, and then for all of you to be there at that moment, and for reference, your brother, his name was Derek, and he was how old when?
He was 10.
10, so he was really,
he might be 11 by then. But
he was really young, and that's I, as a parent myself and as you, that's something I cannot imagine or, want to feel. But, and what were those when you did find out, I know emotion, sadness and stuff, but what were those emotions that you were just kind of going through?
I think it's a lot of what most people go through, right? It's like, at first it's like, is this even real, right? Is this even happening?
Yeah.
And then you kind of go to, it's real. Now, how am I going to process this?
Right.
Right. And I think for me, I processed it in terms of my faith.
Yep.
But what I think I understood more clearly than ever before was that the gospel is not just theory.
Right. It's not just in a book.
It's not just words in a book. Right. It's an actual the things that we talk about and teach as missionaries are true, and not just true, but they have real application in our lives. Because when somebody like, especially as young as that, passes away, and I had never experienced a death before, all of a sudden it becomes like, do I really believe that there's a resurrection? Do I really believe I'm going to see my brother again? Do I really believe that my brother is...
What am I teaching out here to these,
Yeah.
And now, is it real to me now?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so for me, then it became this, just this overwhelming understanding that what I had been teaching was true. And I knew it was true, but it took it to a different level.
Right.
And I was a different missionary after that, because I wasn't just testifying about things that like we said, we read in the scriptures, right?
Yeah.
And we have a intellectual understanding of these things, and we also gain a testimony of these things. And now it's like, now these things are real because they're applied to your life in a way that they had never been before.
Yeah.
And so then I was able to tell people, like, who are, questioning, look, my brother passed away a few weeks ago or a few months ago. Let me tell you what this means to me when I talk about the resurrection, or I talk about the Savior, atoning and being resurrected for us. Like, those things can be directly applied. Yeah.
Especially in such a real sense with the loss of a brother, or, a sibling while you're out. And then it, it's like you said, that meaning there's more meaning, like understanding, and, you knew already, but now you knew, now now that spirit, and then also just the willingness to, because I'm sure if you said, I'm home, I got to be home with the family. Yeah. I'm sure nobody would have said anything against it, but you still, what pushed you to, I need to get back out to that mission field, and this is a horrible experience, but I still need to fulfill my mission. People are still depending on me in my mission, Oklahoma.
Well, I had the opportunity to speak at my brother's funeral, and there was one message that above all that I felt really strongly that I needed to deliver at his funeral, and that was the scripture in the Book of Mormon that says the sting of death is swallowed up in Christ. And that to me was the message, I think, for me, that just rang in my ears, right? Yeah. It was like I knew that horrible as this was, a horrible experience for me, for my family, right? That because of Christ, it's gonna be okay. Yeah. And I knew that there were people out there who needed to hear that. Right. My family, I hope that my family, that I could share that with them. Yeah. In the place that they were at, and the struggles and the fear that they, I'm sure had at that time. Yeah. But then, can I go share that with others who are feeling this way too? Yeah.
Or is going through maybe even that same exact experience,
Yeah. And there are others out there who need that hope. Yeah. And now I can share it in a much different way, in a much more direct, because of my own experience now. Right. I can go and share this in a more powerful way. And so I tried to do that. Yep. And I was able to come back and talk at one of our mission conferences about my experience. Yeah. And that was just an amazing experience to share that with a room of 50 missionaries 50 or whatever plus, it was. Yeah. And then to go out and just start teaching the gospel in a different way. Right. Because I knew what I had experienced. And so, and I will also say that I did recognize my brother's presence on my mission. Yeah. One night in particular. Yeah. I was just on the couch, just laying on the couch, and just kind of thinking about everything. Right. Everything that had happened and everything that was, and I became aware. Yeah. Of his presence in the room. Yeah. He was there, and nothing was necessarily communicated other than right. It was just almost like a stop by and visit, and right. Yeah. Just checking on me. Right. And I understand that on the aspect of, like, with your sister, my wife. She's had those a couple of times where she's definitely felt the your brother. His presence, and I know getting to know your family and seeing how it's affected everybody, but I never got the opportunity to meet him, yeah. But I just know like seeing that it affected you in certain ways, but at the end of the day, you still had to get out there, and like you said, now I have a perspective that I don't have that perspective, and honestly, like, and to be real with you, I don't even know if I want that perspective, sure, yeah. But at the end of the day, you knew that it was something. Now I have an extra, I don't want to cheapen the experience to like a tool, but now you had something, to quantify or qualify, an extra, when you're out. I had a different
perspective,
the experience gave depth to my understanding, exactly. And my testimony. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Because that, when I hear that story, it's just, to me, it's just like, wow. Yeah. What what an experience to have when you're out on your mission and, you know, you lose a family member, right? And it's not like not like a grandpa or grandma are like, well, you know, expecting it. It's kind of, you know, I mean, you know, this is a young child who had, you know, immortal life ahead of him, and for whatever reason,
short,
you know.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's just a matter of like, to be honest with you, like, this is going to sound weird, but it was one of the most spiritual experiences of my life.
Right. Yeah. Well.
Because I felt the Spirit so strongly.
Yeah.
Throughout that time when I was home with my family.
Yeah.
And to just try to be there, to be a comfort and a help as much as I could.
Yep.
And then to take that experience back out into the mission field.
Right.
And try to testify to a greater degree. That was just, I don't know, you know, how else I could have. I mean, it's just one of those things that gives you an experience in your life that changes you. Right. And not that I, you know, I would much rather have my brother here.
Yeah. Right.
And
exactly.
I wouldn't wish that experience on anybody. Yeah. But it's a life-changing thing too.
Yeah. Yep. And you think that increased? You know, silly question, but increased your faith out there on the field when you went back on the mission?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I had even more certainty about what I was doing out there and why I was there.
Why you were called to that area. And yeah. You know, it's such a crazy tragedy, but I want to transition to another, and then I want to kind of tie the two together when we get done talking about it. But
sure.
I'm assuming the same area is, so you had another experience. When
same
you
area,
with your brother when he came out.
Yeah.
And I know I'm smiling, you know, but you guys were held hostage.
Yeah, we were held at gunpoint.
At gunpoint. Yeah. Not just like, hey, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
This individual had a gun.
He had a gun. Yeah.
So what happened? How did that even come about? And like, how did that even happen?
Yeah, so we had been serving together a little bit. I don't know, maybe a week or two. But we were in our apartment and we get a phone call. And it was from somebody who said that they had looked us up in the phone book. So that's back when we had phone books. And, and you could look up
the yellow pages and the white pages.
The missionary's number was in the phone book. And so he, this gentleman called, and he said that he was really down and depressed, really needed somebody to talk to. He said he was contemplating taking his own life. Right. And he was just really in bad shape, and he said, I need somebody to talk to. And he had found us, you know. He looked to us as ministers, as somebody that could help him. And so we got his address. Yep. And it was out of town, like maybe 20 minutes outside of Anderson. Yeah. And so we hopped in the car and we followed his directions and went out there. And so it was out on this dirt road in the middle of the country. There's like a white trailer out in the middle of this field, and then the field is kind of surrounded by trees. And there's a little driveway that goes up to the trailer. Yeah. And we go inside, and we go and knock on the door, and this guy comes to the door and lets us in, and he starts talking to us. I'll call him John, but so John lets us inside, right? And so we start talking to him. You know, we sit down at the kitchen table with him, and John starts telling us about kind of how tough and difficult his life is right now. Well, there's a guy over in the living room of this trailer who's sitting in a wheelchair.
So there's two people there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's John, and then this guy he says is his brother.
Yeah.
He said my brother over here is, he can't do anything for himself. Right. It was clear that his brother was not mobile. Right. Just totally dependent on other people to do things for him in this wheelchair and whatnot. And so we're sitting at his kitchen table, and he's making some food and giving us some water and things like that and snacks, and he's just telling us his story. But as this goes on, he starts getting more and more kind of worked up and agitated, and he kind of was cycling between he's okay and then not okay, and then okay and then not okay, and every time he goes to not okay, it gets worse. It gets worse. Wow. And so he starts talking about. He said, he's like, I can't do it anymore. He's like, I'm ready to end it. Right. And and after, I don't know, maybe an hour or so of this conversation, he says, do you want to see my way out? Wow. And I was like, no. Right. I was like, no, I don't want to see your way out. And before I realized what has happened, he stood up and he walks down the hallway. Back at the end of the trailer were some bedrooms. So I yelled down the hall. I was like, John, come back. It's like, we don't need this. Right. And my 17-year-old brother is sitting at the table, and his eyes are about as big as pie plates. Right. And he's just, we're just waiting to see what happens next. If I had the wherewithal, I would have just ran out of the trailer right then. But at the time, you're just kind of like, don't know quite what to do.
Or what's really going on. You're just like, hey, something's happening. But
so he comes back with a revolver in his hand, a pretty big revolver. Really? Yeah, and he brings it back. And we're still sitting at the kitchen table, and he's like at the head of the table, and he sits down with the revolver on the table like this. So he's here, and I'm like where you are. Yeah. So we're that close, if not closer. Right. And he starts talking about
gun in hand.
Yeah, he starts talking about about taking his own life again, and anyway. It becomes, this conversation keeps going again, like it had before. Right. It's okay. And then he gets a little lower and a little lower. Yeah. And anyway, he's just like, I'm just ready, to end my life. And he picks the gun up and he puts the gun to his head. Wow. And I was like, John, it's like, don't do it. Right. Don't do it. Like, you've got other things to live for. This isn't as bad as you think. Yep. Like, let's bring this back. Yeah, dial it back. Yeah, let's talk about this. Let's talk about it. Don't do anything rash here. He's like, and then he looks at me, he's like, you're right. He's like, I can't do that yet. He's like, because there won't be anybody to take care of my brother. Yeah. He said, so first I got to take him out, and he points the gun at his brother across the room. He's like, first I'm gonna shoot him. He said, and then I might as well take you two out with me. Wow. And he points the gun across the table at my brother, who's at the other end of the table. And then he points the gun at me. Jeez. And the barrel is like, so he's got a foot or two from my forehead. And at this point, the thought is like, I just got to like tackle him to the ground. I'm like, I don't know what else to do here. But my worry was, I tackle him, the gun goes off and hits somebody.
Where is it going to go? Yeah.
Where's it going to go? Yep. And that was my my concern. So I was hedging a little bit, trying to figure out what to do.
Yep.
Gun comes back down on the table, and we start talking again. And again, I'm like, I could just grab it.
Right.
You know, it's just a foot away from me. I could just grab it. But again, I'm like, if he pulls the trigger, somebody's going to get hit potentially.
Right.
So he, you know, I was like, so tell me what would make things better. What would make things better?
And this isn't something you prepared for.
No. No, I'm not a counselor.
Right.
I'm not a therapist, right?
Right.
This is not, I'm 19, 20 years old or whatever I was. Anyway, so he said, well, you know, he's like, if I had family around, that would help. You know, somebody to help me take care of him. And he's like, that would help me a lot, you know. And he's like you guys. He's like, if you guys came and lived with me. Yeah. And at this point, I'm like, okay, like, you know, he's not in his right mind.
Yep.
And he's like, if you guys came and lived with me, then I could, you know, I would have some more joy and happiness in my life. And he's like, you guys could come, you guys could go get your stuff and move in here. And, you know, I could be like your dad and you could be like my sons.
Wow.
And, you know, I could give you money to go to the movies. Like, I mean, he's just kind of making up this fantasy world. And at this point, I kind of know that he's not in a place where I'm going to be able to reason with him.
Right. Yeah.
And so I go along with it.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? I said, John, that's actually a really good idea.
Yeah.
And at this point, I'm just trying to preserve our lives,
you
know? Yeah. And I said, John, here's what we could do. So we can leave. We can go get in our car. We can drive back to town, get our stuff, and we'll come back out and we'll come, you know, come out here and live with you. He's like, really? He's like, you guys would do that? I was like, yeah, we'll come out and do that.
Right.
And so anyway, so he stands up. He's like, well, great. He's like, I'll see you guys in a little bit. Wow. And he leaves the gun on the table. Yeah. Which was the best thing that had happened to me all day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cause I knew he was, at least was clear of the gun. Mm-hmm. And so he walks us to the door. Yep. And this guy that had just been pointing the gun at our heads, now is giving us hugs. And he's like, well, I'll see you guys, you know, a little bit later. I mean, that's the kind of like mental state he was in. It just wasn't rational at all. Yeah. So we get in the car and we just take off. Yep. You know, I'm just like, I floor it and I'm headed back to town. Yeah. And we go back to our apartment and I call my zone leader and I tell him what happened. Yeah. And he's like, wow. I said, I'm concerned because he's still talking about suicide and he's talking about killing his brother. Yeah. I was like, I think I need to go to the police. Yep. And he's like, okay, go to the police. He's like, don't get any more involved than you already are. Yeah. So we get in the car, we go down to the police station because we knew exactly where it was. We'd gone past it many times. So we go to the police station and we walk in and, you know, this is a small town police station. There's like, I don't know, maybe like 8 cops. And they're all there and they like have nothing going on. Right. And they all jump into action when they hear us talking about what had just happened. Yep. And they had us write, you know, our statements about what had happened. And anyway, so we go, so the chief police officer there, I mean, he was not much older than I was. Like, he was probably in his mid-20s or something. Yeah. And he was like, you guys you handled this really well. He's like, this is great. He's like, we got to go out there. Yeah. He's like, but we want you to help us and just show us where this place is. Yep. So we get in the car and we're driving out there and we have like 4 cop cars trailing us out there into the country.
Right.
And he had said to me, he's like, don't pull right up to his house. He's like, pull up just close enough that you can see the house in the distance.
Yeah.
And then just pull over to the side of the road. So that's what we did. And so we get out of the car, and all these cops are around, like, just like strategizing how they're going to do this. And in the meantime, I look down in the field below the trailer, and there's really tall grass, you know, like 4 or 5 foot tall grass. And I see these 2 cops like making their way through the grass with shotguns up to the back side of the trailer. And I was like, oh man, this is about to get real.
Right.
And so anyway, the cops are talking, kind of figuring out their game plan. And the chief police officer comes over, and he says to me, he's like, okay, we have a plan. He's like, but we're going to need your help. Yeah. And I'm thinking in my head, my zone leader just told me not to get more involved. And he's like, you know, but when you're that age and a police officer's telling you what
you're gonna listen
to do, you're like, you know, you're just kind of like going along. Yeah. So he says to me, he's like, you're about my size. He's like, so I need you to change into your clothes. Yeah. And I need to dress as a missionary. Right. And I'm like, you can't make this stuff up. Yeah. And so there was a neighbor just down the hill. So we walked over to the neighbor, and the cop knocks on the door. Yeah. And the cop is like, you know, hey, can we come in? We have a situation here. We need to change. So he asks the guy for some sweats. Mm-hmm. So I go in their bathroom. I change into the sweats. I hand them the cop my missionary clothes, and he changes in to my missionary clothes. And then I look over, and they're putting my brother in a bulletproof vest. And because this is their plan. Yeah. This is their plan is that they're going to drive up. They're going to get in our mission car. Yeah. They're going to drive up to the trailer. Right. They're going to pretend like we're the missionaries coming back. Right. But my brother is going to knock on the door.
Oh, he's going into this.
Yeah, because their thought was like he'll recognize my brother. Right, right. And then the cop dressed as me will stay behind him. Okay, yeah. When they come in, he said, "What will John do when you come in?" He said, "Well, he'll probably give us a hug, because that's what he did when we left." He said, "Okay, you give him a hug when you walk in." He said, "And I'll follow up and give him a hug, but then I'll tackle him to the ground." Yeah. So that's the plan. So anyway, this plan is all come together in this random couple's living room, and the cops and my brother are about to leave, and I'm just supposed to stay there. Right. And I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. Yeah. So, they're about to walk out the door, and I said, wait. I said, before we do this, I said, we need to have a prayer. Yeah. Wow. So we're all standing in a circle, me and 6 cops and this neighbor. Random couple. Yeah. And I say a prayer that they'll be protected. Yeah. I didn't know what else to do at that point. And so anyway, they get in the mission car, and I see the mission car headed down the road to where the trailer is. And I just was like, this better go well, because mom and dad are going to kill me if this doesn't go well.
So, especially with your younger brother who's just out for a couple of weeks. Yeah. Experiences is getting an experience. You know?
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's right. And so anyway, so I see the mission car park. I see the 2 of them get out and go behind the trailer. Yeah. The front door was on the other side of the trailer, so I couldn't see
what was going on.
I'm just listening for gunshots or something, and I don't hear anything, and a few minutes pass, and then I see my brother come back by himself and get in the car and come back down. Right. And I was like, okay, he's safe, you know? And anyway, he came back and told me what happened. He said they knocked on the door and a lady answers the door that wasn't there before.
Really?
Yeah. And they talked to the lady. They're like, is John here? And she's like, oh, he's passed out. He's been drinking and he's passed out on the bed in the back room.
Really?
So they rushed in and they apprehended him. And then they started questioning her, like, who are you? And she's like, I'm just, I'm with the whatever agency it was.
Right.
And I'm just here to take care of this guy, the guy that was in the wheelchair. And they said, you mean John's brother? And she's like, oh, that's not his brother. She's like, he's paid to come in here and take care of him just like I am. I was just coming in to relieve him.
Oh, wow.
You know, to switch shifts with him. And she's like, and I came in and he was passed out on the bed. Yeah. So the cops went over to the and confiscated the gun, which was still sitting on the kitchen table. And they opened it up and it was, loaded, fully loaded. They were like, you guys are so lucky. He's like, if he had pulled that trigger, you'd be gone. Yeah. And so anyway, it was, so we went back, home and we were just like, we were really blessed to be still alive and kicking after that, after that experience. Yeah.
Yeah. What was that experience like after telling the mission president and all that just happened? And
probably it was part of our just youth and inexperience. We didn't even think to tell him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we were just like, we just kind of went on with the rest of our day. Yeah, it was night. It was night by the time we got home. We went to bed and woke up the next day, and that was it. We didn't talk about it or anything. But a few months later in the mail, my brother and I both got certificates of from the police officers of bravery for communities, service above and beyond the call of duty.
That's cool, though.
It was really cool to get that from them. So
that's when I sit there and think about, we all have our unique, things that happen on our mission, but when I listen to yours, I'm always fascinated when I hear you were held hostage, and then, and then obviously what we talked about prior to, the loss of your brother. Man, that's to continue on. Once again, this happened before your brother, but how did like you said, you're just like, well, I guess inexperience and youth, we just drove on the next day like it was nothing.
I think it just didn't cross our minds to. Really? Yeah. It was kind of like, okay, that thing happened. Mm-hmm. That was wild, you know. And then we just kind of we moved on. We didn't talk about it a whole lot after that.
No residual type stuff that affected you later on in life, or?
Oh, definitely. I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. I'll just give you a couple examples. One thing that I do, I don't sit with my back to the door very often.
Yeah, that's a very,
I'll if I'm at home, if I'm sitting somewhere, I'm usually in the seat that's facing the front door. And I think it's two things. It's one is I know that's my way out. Mm-hmm. Or if somebody comes in, I can see who's coming in and out of the house.
Yep.
So that's just part of wired in my brain.
Especially having that experience.
Yeah. And I have dealt with some anxiety over the years.
Yeah.
And I think that's I would not be surprised if that's part of it.
Right.
I'm very almost kind of hyper aware about safety. Mm-hmm. Protecting our family, those sorts of things. I think more maybe than most people. I think more about that.
Yeah.
I'm sure all of this sounds very familiar to you, having served in the military.
Yeah.
And your experiences, but this is, this kind of it does change how you think about the world. The world all of a sudden looks less safe to you just in general because of things that happen like that.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the only time we had guns, pulled on us on my mission. We had a couple of other experiences where people came out of their doors with guns. Yeah. Not knowing who we were.
I think that was more of just because it is the rural areas in the South.
Yeah.
I don't know South, but rural areas. And, that's kind of how they, being from the South, I know, most people always got a gun or something ready or nearby, but
Oh, totally. Yeah. I think, you're a stranger and
who are you?
They're not used to, some of those areas that we were
in a white shirt and tie, and what are you doing?
Yeah. What are you doing out here? That there's maybe some distrust of strangers or government or whoever.
Whatever it is.
Yeah. We had a couple of times where people would greet us, with a gun in hand. Luckily nobody ever really pointed at us.
Right. That was just more of like, hey, look, but this situation definitely, after that with you and your brother, how did you guys I guess use that experience also, to, push forward or,
it's interesting.
Or grow from that.
It was I think a pivotal reason why Aaron joined law enforcement actually.
Yeah.
Because he, for him, it was like, he was kind of like in the action, and it was kind of like, that's just his personality anyway, a little bit, is he's kind of wanting to be in the action. Right. Yep. And so, so I think that was, he's not in law enforcement anymore, but he was for, I think about 8 years or something like that. And so I think that was part of it for him. Yep. Was just seeing how law enforcement worked to bring that to resolution. Yep. I think it actually kind of was inspirational to him. Yep. To be part of that. For me, I mostly have kind of, I get asked to tell that story from time to time. Yeah. And,
well, it's so unique.
It is. Yeah. And I share it, I think sharing it in a way kind of helps, take a little bit of the edge off of how serious that really was.
Right. No.
Because you can kind of talk about it, and people are always like, react to it like they're pretty stunned by it. It's kind of fun story to tell in a weird way.
But in reality, but I got what you're saying though, like you said, me being in the military and, soldiers or whatever don't want to talk about anything. Yeah. And, and I've learned the more that I've kind of started opening up more with my wife or those close to me, it's, helped with that, you know, and, and that's a very serious thing. Like, yes, it's kind of interesting and like, wow, this would happen like on a mission and, and this is, and for you listening, this is a very unique situation and, and it's something that, you can see that you've grown and especially with the loss and, as we finish up here though, when you served especially with these two experiences and all the many others, how has that helped you grow in the church or spiritually with you, your family and your own children?
Yeah. I mean, crazy experiences aside, I think, or as part of it really, I think one thing you learn is that the Lord's always there. He's in the details. Right. He's intimately aware of, even when we make, probably getting us into that situation, not the best decision making from, a young person, but the Lord still, he had a way to help us and to bring that situation to resolution. And I think you have those experiences in your life, or my brother passing away, right? You have those experiences in your life and you come out on the other side of this other side of it and you realize the Lord has my back, right? The Lord knows me. and he has my back, and I can trust that he'll have my back.
Right.
Even when things go sideways, you know, he's got my back. He'll find ways to turn negative experiences into good ones in time. Sometimes it takes a while, you know, but he can take those experiences and he can, you know, it's kind of like what the Lord told Joseph Smith when he was in Liberty Jail, right?
Yeah.
All these things shall be for thy experience and thy good, right?
Right.
We will grow from these experiences, even though they're really difficult or challenging in the time.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things when you go on a mission, you come back a changed person, not just because of the people that you interact with, although that's a big part of it.
Right, it is.
But also because the experiences, the tough experiences that you sometimes have, that will bring you to your knees, that will make you search your soul, that will make you stretch, that will make you reach out to heaven in a much, in a way that you hadn't ever had to before.
Yeah.
And when you have those experiences, you have them forever to rely on for the rest of your life.
Yep.
And when things get hard again, as they inevitably will, you have those experiences to look back on. You can say, you know, I remember when I was in this situation and I put my faith and trust in the Lord, and he delivered me. He helped me through it. And often that's through other people.
Yep.
You know, it's there's a lot of times when it's maybe not so obvious,
right,
the way he helped you, but he will. And then when you look back on it, you can see it a lot of times more clearly
than what you might have before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the big lesson there, is that the Lord knows us and he takes care of us. And
he knows us individually.
And he knows us individually. Yeah. And he'll give us the right experiences at the right time that will help us to grow. And I've taken those experiences with me throughout my life. You know, I think that's the power of a mission is, you know, it reframes everything from that point forward in your life, if you let it.
Right.
And everything going forward, you have the opportunity to look back and say, I remember when I was on a mission and I dealt with this situation
or scenario.
And you can remember how you and the Lord worked together to come out on the other side. Yeah. And I think that gives us great power.
Exactly. And then, you know, what would you say to the missionaries that are planning on a mission, or they're kind of on the fence, or they know they're going, but what would some piece of advice that you would give them to prepare for themselves as they get ready to go on their missions?
Yeah, I mean, one thing is that if you have a desire to serve, just go serve. Yeah. You know, I think sometimes people wait for a huge spiritual experience before they go. If you have a desire to serve, go serve. Yeah. You know, and the Lord will help you to discover your purpose in serving as you go and serve.
Fine tune you almost.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And the second thing I would say is, you know, along with that, if you don't have a desire to serve, remember that the prophet has said that we should serve as long as we're able. Right. And so, if you're able, and you don't have a desire to serve, is if you're able. Yep. That's key, because that's an important qualifier. And you need to. There are legitimate reasons why you can't, and that's fine, and that's okay. A personal thing. That is, yeah. But for those who are able but maybe are lacking the desire, I think I would say, find out what you believe. Find out what you really believe, and the way you find that out and learn what you really believe is to to seek the Lord's help and seek revelation and get into the scriptures. Read the Book of Mormon.
Right.
If you read the Book of Mormon and you pray to know if it's true, and you get to the end of that book, you'll have the desire.
Yeah.
You know, if you approach it sincerely, some don't. Some
right.
read and don't approach it sincerely. But if you really approach it sincerely, you're going to come out on the other side of that knowing it's true.
Right.
And then a lot of your questions and doubts about whether you should serve or not are going to be taken care of.
Yep.
all on their own.
Right. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Definitely, you know, especially sharing, you know, those stories, and especially the loss. I know that's a tough one for your family, you know, and I really do appreciate that. And, you know, and then just for y'all out there listening, just understand, you know, these aren't normal experience, that those two things, and, you know, it happens, but, you know, the mission is definitely a great and wonderful,
yes,
you know, thing to do.
I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah.
I mean, no way. Yeah.
Yep.
You couldn't pay me enough money to trade it.
Trade it, yeah. You know,
so, yeah.
You know, and that's what I felt on my mission.
Yeah.
So, you know, once again, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know,
thank you.
Yeah. And I think we're good.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, no, thank you, man.
Yeah.
That was great. So.
Yeah.